This whole situation is a big roller coaster, so please bear with me. I, female 50, have a daughter, Maya, 27, with my husband, 50s. Maya got pregnant with our first grandchild, Jake, tween boy, when she was only 17. The father remained involved, and my husband and I spent a lot of time looking after the little one so that Maya could focus on school. Maya had another baby when she was 19, our second grandchild, Noah, pre-tween male. Shortly after Noah was born, the father of both kids stopped being involved and he moved to another part of the country. However, he did pay child support. Up until around 3 years ago, Maya lived with us rent-free. My husband and I looked after the kids a lot, and we were the ones taking them to school and cooking them dinner. We understood that Maya didn't have the financial means to move out, but it was very frustrating, and we felt that Maya wasn't taking responsibility. So 3 years ago, Maya started online dating this wealthy man who was in his 40s. She told us that she's in love with him and gonna move to the other side of the country to move in with him, but that she can't take the kids with her because he doesn't like children. My husband and I told her that this situation was absolutely insane and that she couldn't be serious. Maya started crying and begging us to let her sign custody over to us so that she could live her dream and not be, quote, shackled down. We agreed, not for Maya's sake, but for Jake and Noah. So we got custody signs over, and we're now Jake and Noah's legal parents. The poor boys were heartbroken when Maya left, and for the first few weeks, they constantly asked to call her and draw pictures of her. We did try to call Maya so the boys could talk to her, but more often than not, she didn't answer the phone. After a few months, she was unreachable and never answered texts or calls for weeks at a time. We've been taking the boys to a child therapist in the past to help them process everything, and they're doing much better now. Last month, Maya called us and explained in tears that the relationship had broken down. She asked if she could come back home and spend time with her kids. It was out of the blue after she had ignored us for 3 years. It was an impulsive decision that was possibly out of spite, but my husband and I told Maya that we were not letting her see the children. We think it would cause them a lot of heartache if she abandoned them again, and that she's an unfit mother who evades responsibility. I know we're within our legal rights to do this, but I want to know if a neutral party thinks we're in the moral wrong. So, am I the idiot for not letting my daughter see her sons? Edit. My husband and I are legal parents. Any mother who signs away her own children to mooch off some rich guy across the country is no mother. You are not the idiot. She wants back into the kids' lives only so she can get free room and board. She'll do it all over again when the next free ride comes along. I wondered about this too. Also, are we not going to acknowledge that while OP writes explicitly that the father pays child support, the mother hasn't been mentioned paying a dime? Glad you had fun with your sugar daddy, but you owe 3 years of child support. You don't get a pass because your parents are raising them. They didn't adopt those kids, even if they have full custody. She's still legally their mother, and she owes her parents tens of thousands in support payments. If she signed her rights away, she most likely isn't required to pay child support. OP, your adult daughter made a choice. Now she has to live with the consequences. You are the mother to those boys. Your husband is dad. You're correct. Your daughter's unfit to be a mother, and honestly, to be a part of your family. She made her choices. You and your grandsons are not what she chose. Unless she shows actual change, prove she's doing well and making consistent efforts, keep those grandbabies away from her. She needs to do the work, not you, not the boys. Don't let your judgment be clouded by your entirely justified anger at your daughter. You should probably involve the kid's therapist to determine what's best for the kids. Take professional advice. This is a tough one, but your daughter clearly doesn't have her priorities straight, and you're to be commended for caring for the kids. She can't just pick up and drop off her children whenever it suits her. My ex-wife and I have 4 kids, Juliet 18, teens Michelle, Levi, and Leah. I have 3 little kids with my new wife, Liam, Sophie, and David. I work long hours and travel a lot for my job, so we have a wonderful live-in nanny, Carmen, to help with the kids. My ex-wife believes that men shouldn't have to do chores or face the consequences for their actions. When our girls would go to her house, she'd make the girls cook for their brother, clean his room, do his laundry, etc., and let him take things from their rooms. As a result, the girls don't visit their mom anymore. The problem is anytime Levi gets into trouble at our house, he calls his mom and she picks him up. No matter how hard I try, he's never had to deal with the consequences of his actions, and he's becoming extremely rude and entitled. Carmen's job is to care for the younger three and cook for the family. The only thing I need her to do for the older kids is to drive them to school, except for Juliet, who drives herself to college. Anything else she chooses to do for the older kids is completely optional. She has a very good relationship with the girls and will gladly siblings. He protested and called his mom to get out of it, but for the first time since the divorce, she will not be available to get him out of this. She was out of the country for her sister's wedding. Levi has been pretty miserable since Monday, when he started doing these chores, and is exhausted by the end of the day, but his behavior towards Carmen has slightly improved. Of course, my ex-wife thinks I'm being cruel to him and making him, quote, work like a slave during his break, but he needs to learn his lesson. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. It astonishes me that your ex-wife's way of thinking men should not help around the house and wait on hands and foot still exists. Your ex is not doing your son any favors at all. If anything, she's stealing valuable life skills from him every time she gives in to him. Yeah, when I was a teen, I thought my parents were cruel, making me do things I didn't like. It took me some growing up before I thanked them for all the, quote, cruel things they did to me to teach me a lesson. Good on you for doing the dirty work to help your son become a better human in the long run. That boy needed to learn that lesson somehow. I can't believe that his mother is coddling him and Cinderellaing his sisters simultaneously. What is he supposed to do when he gets older and moves out on his own if he's never ever learned or been made to do chores? Bachelors are men and do not reside in their filth, usually, hopefully. Equality among siblings is also essential to not breed resentment, so don't feel sorry for him. Let him learn to work. I live in a house with 2 other people. We're all 21. It's around 75 degrees Fahrenheit outside, so our thermostat has been around 69 to 74, depending on the day. One of my roommates, Sandra, has been steadily increasing the temperature daily. I come home to it being at 78 degrees, then 80 degrees, then 85 degrees, and today it was set to 90 degrees. When she set it to 80, I texted her and asked if she could keep the house at a comfortable temperature because it was getting really hot. She didn't answer. When she set it to 90, I asked her in person if she could please stop turning it up so high because our house was literally a sauna at this point. Instead, she started yelling at me, calling me an inconsiderate witch, and said that she had a medical condition that required a warm house. She had never mentioned this before, even when we talked about the thermostat temp when we all moved in. I told her that 90 degrees on a 75-degree day is ridiculous and could potentially be dangerous. She started mocking me, saying I just didn't want to sweat and that I was too sensitive. We were arguing, and our third roommate got involved. He said he understood where I was coming from, but S has no obligation to tell us about her medical issues, and we need to respect her needs. While she isn't obligated to tell us her medical information, if she truly needs to live in a 90-degree house, that should absolutely be discussed beforehand, and she shouldn't assume others are okay with it. Eventually, we agreed to keep the temp between 70 to 75. Things are really tense now. Sandra thinks I'm an idiot, and the other roommate thinks I'm being inconsiderate. I feel like I'm going insane. Am I the idiot for not accommodating my roommate's medical need for a hot house? Not the idiot. Is your roommate the devil? There's your answer. I don't think the roommate can let anyone live in peace with her. Kick her butt out. If this is such an issue, she should cough up the dough to live by herself and foot her own energy bill. Suggest your roommate buy a portable space heater, and you can buy a floor fan or window AC for your bedrooms if the situation worsens. While someone does not have to disclose any medical information to anyone else, if they expect someone to adapt to a said disability, They are fully expected to disclose that before moving in. For now, OP plans to move out. This clearly isn't a long-term livable place for you if they try crap like this. Agree. It's the same if you're allergic to something and choose not to disclose it. Then you can't get mad if other people bring it into the house. Medical conditions should be discussed on a need-to-know basis, and if the roommate needs a higher temperature, then she needs to tell the people living with her. I did a Google search of medical conditions that require high heat, and all the results pertain to heat stroke, stress, exhaustion, how to treat them, and how to avoid them. Honestly, I'm calling BS on this supposed medical condition. Put on some extra clothes. Actually, OP, have you considered at-home nudity, given how hot it is in the house? People can always put on more clothes and blankets, but you can't be sweating like pigs with the heat on. I'm always on board with trying to be considerate of others' needs. However, 90 degrees indefinitely is an unreasonable ask. I'm shocked your other roommate isn't with you on this. Update. I'm moving out. This, combined with other incidents, pushed me over the edge of being able to live with her. I'm staying with a friend while figuring out my next move. Thank you all so much for helping me realize that I'm not crazy. And those were insane living conditions. My husband, 36, and I, 34 male, have been married for 5 years, together for 10. We have a preschool boy of our own, and my husband has a son, Paul, teen, from a previous relationship. For most of his life, Paul has lived with his mom and only visited us once a month due to his mom's job. He moved in with us 2 years ago. Paul has had a condition since he was a little child that makes him deaf. His condition is gradually getting worse. He can still hear and have a conversation wearing a particular headphone that helps him improve his hearing. Still, he's expressed that wearing a headphone all the time makes him uncomfortable, and he's become more proud of his condition and wants to embrace it. He learned sign language to empower himself. To be honest, as he didn't live with us, I wasn't interested in this. But this all changed when he moved in with us. I saw him interacting with some friends with sign language and asked him to teach me to make him feel accepted and comfortable. He was so excited to teach me, and even if he could talk and hear, with the headphones' help, we used it as a form of communication between us. My husband doesn't like sign language. He says that since Paul has a headphone, he should make an effort. I grew up in a monolingual house, but hubby grew up in a bilingual house, and he's told me that he was taught that speaking a language in a room where at least one person doesn't is disrespectful. So he thinks that Paul and I talking in sign language is disrespectful because he doesn't and feels excluded. We were watching a movie yesterday, so Paul started talking to me in sign language about some characters. Thus, my husband got mad at both of us for making him feel excluded and found it disrespectful because he doesn't speak the language. So I told him to learn it, and my stepson and I kept talking in sign language. He said that I make him look like a bad father for speaking the language while he doesn't. He then left the living room and went to our bedroom. He hasn't talked to us yet beyond the bare minimum. Paul thinks we were some idiots, and he says he knows where his dad is coming from since he knows what it feels like to be excluded, and Paul hasn't tried sign language with me today. Am I the idiot? I'm sorry you learned sign language for this kid, but his bio dad hasn't? Wow, not the idiot, OP. That's borderline abusive, and it's ableist. His analogy about language doesn't apply because it's a disability, not just a different language. He needs to take some classes so he can properly communicate with his son and stop trying to force him to communicate in a way he doesn't prefer. Doesn't like sign language? What in the name of all ableist BS did I just read? Oh my God, I just reread. And the young man is his own son? I just can't. Ableist and abusive? What a winning combo. It's heartbreaking that his own father won't even consider trying to learn his language. You sound like a great stepmother, making him feel loved and accepted. I would have a serious conversation with your husband. Also, you're not living in a bilingual house. It's disrespectful not to learn the only language Paul will hear in a few years. Many deaf people or hard of hearing people don't like to wear equipment to hear better. When you're a parent, it's your role to accommodate your own child's disability, not the other way around. My wife has a lot of issues with my family, mainly my mom. I've confronted my mom about multiple problematic behaviors towards my wife. I've put consequences in place and limited contact as necessary. My wife even told our therapist that I'd done a great job. Now my issue is that I feel my wife sets too many boundaries, and at this point it's just nitpicking. Recently, we spent some time with my family, and after, my wife approached me and asked if I noticed that my mom recoiled every time I got near her. I had not noticed. I know she's no longer comfortable with affection from me, and I respect that, and she won't choose to sit next to me at the table, but I'm not sure she's recoiling. She also claims my mom recoils with her and will physically move away from her. My wife asked me to confront her, as she felt it could set an unhealthy precedent for our kids. I said my mom doesn't owe me affection, but she pointed out that my mom kisses multiple other family members on the lips and doesn't even let me within 3 feet of her. I said that this is still her right. She said it makes her uncomfortable, and she wants a boundary set that if my mom physically flinches when I get near her, we will leave. I said absolutely not, and we fought over it. I finally asked her why she didn't want me to have any family. She seemed confused, and I said, surely that's her goal with all these idiotic boundaries, because how else do you justify telling someone not to flinch? She began to cry and said that I was portraying her as an abuser and that what I said was manipulative. No, not the idiot. Your wife is confusing boundaries with controlling other people's behavior. She gets to decide how she and your children interact with her. She does not get to choose how your mother interacts or reacts to you. She doesn't get to control how your mother feels. Honestly, if your mom has been reprimanded so many times, she's probably keeping her distance, and with good reason. I don't know about the past issues, but your wife is being ridiculous on this one. It sounds like the problem is your wife and not your mom. Does your wife realize that just as she's allowed to set boundaries, so is your mother? So she's basically trying to set the boundary that your mother not be allowed to dictate who she lets into her personal space. That's idiotic. As you say, your mother does not owe you affection. Furthermore, if your wife is actually concerned about your children and not simply on a power trip, she should realize this. Setting the example that people who don't force themselves to be physically affectionate with the two of you will be punished is dangerous. You're teaching them that they're not entitled to agency over their bodies. And FYI, you're allowed to set boundaries as well, such as your wife gets to decide how her relationship with your mother goes, but you get to choose how your relationship with your mother goes. You're not your wife's possession to be dictated to.